We're here today to launch the final reports of the Enhanced Crash Investigation Study. It's been a 7-year effort to study 400 serious injury crashes to understand the key factors that influence the outcomes and the injuries we see from those crashes. Starting in 2014, we started collecting around 2,000 items from each serious injury crash that we were investigating. We've since analysed those crashes in detail with experts from around the world and written them up in reports that we're now launching today. Yet the TAC has invested in the Enhanced Crash Investigation Study because while we have a lot of information about fatal injury crashes and how to prevent those crashes and the injuries that came from them, we have far less information about serious injury. And the burden of serious injury on the community, on families that have loved ones who have serious injury, but also financially for the Transport Accident Commission and the Victorian community is huge. And yet we have far less effort going into preventing those types of crashes. The TAEC has invested just over $8 million in the Enhanced Crash Investigation Study, but to some degree that's just the tip of the iceberg. The man hours from the TAC, from Monash University Accident Research Centre, from all the world experts that have been involved and government agencies, hospitals, ambulance. There's just been so many people involved. So whilst $8 million was the actual cost, we've had a huge amount of support from people right across the world. The Enhanced Crash Investigation Study is very much about providing information and evidence to support future investments in road safety, whether it's investments in vehicle safety, in roads infrastructure, new programs for police. The information is there to support those investments and us continuing to drive down the number of people who are seriously injured. Hi everybody, thank you very much for coming to what is really our second symposium on the Enhanced Crash Investigation Study. I apologise that we've organised this the week before Christmas, but it was one of the projects that we really wanted to deliver this year, and have a guess what? We got there. Before we move too far into proceedings, I would just like to, we're getting there. I'd just like to acknowledge that we're meeting today on the traditional lands of the Woiwurrung and the Boonwurrung people. And I'd also like to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. I thought I'd also just mention that the piece of artwork you see behind the acknowledgement is actually the TAC's own artwork to recognise our journey in terms of reconciliation. It was undertaken, or it was, I suppose, painted by Norm Stanley, who is with us down in Geelong in Wadawurrung country, and we're very proud of it. You'll probably see quite a few people with lanyards around that have got lanyards with that imprint, but it appears largely around the TAC headquarters in Geelong. So I just thought I'd mention that so that you're all aware of why we're there. The other really interesting thing is that Norm, who developed it, very much wanted it to represent what the TAC represents, and those sort of the lines that look like roads, that's exactly what they are, the roads through the country. So, we're here, as I said, to talk about the findings from the Enhanced Crash Investigation Study. This has been a really long journey for a lot of people, and we will thank those people as it comes to pass, but it's fairly much 7 years of work. And the person who's been incredibly supportive of that work from day one is our CEO, Joe Calafiore. I think we would have liked, and he would have liked us to complete the study a little bit earlier than we eventually did, but has been supportive all the way, and I thought we would just get him to say a few words about what that means to us at the TAC. So, Joe, welcome to stage.
Thanks very much, Sam, and I'd also like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners here and pay my respects to elders past and present. You're not kidding, Sam. Sam often says road safety never sleeps, and I went, geez, Symposium the week before Christmas, we don't muck around here. So an absolute pleasure to be joining with everyone today on what's been a really important and critical piece of work. I'd just like to acknowledge a few people that I can see, and starting with Associate Professor Mike Fitzharris, the study and the lead of this ECIS study, Professor Stuart Newsteed, David Logan, Judith Charlton, all of the fabulous team of people from MUARC, Dr. Soames Job, who is the CEO of the Global Road Safety Solutions and is just rejoining us from a really successful stint at the World Bank. So lovely to see you here, Soames. Our own Samantha Cofield, Head of Road Safety, and to all of the staff here from the TAC. Libby Murphy, the Acting Chief Executive Officer at Ambulance of Victoria and a former Assistant Commissioner for Road Policing. So good to see you here, Libby. Marcelo Vidales, Head of Road Safety at the Department of Transport. TAC board members David Heath and Tony Dudley from the Executive. And a welcome to all of guests, Professor Max Cameron, Eric Howard, I can see up the back here. Thank you so much in a really busy time of year to be joining us here today. Before I make a few comments about the ECIS, I get the enormous privilege, if you could just indulge me for a couple of minutes, to say a few things about a great person, which is David Healy. You know, when we heard that news recently of David's sad passing, so many people in this room, Victoria, Australia, internationally, had the privilege of working with David Healy. I had the absolute honour when we made the relocation to Geelong, open plan offices obviously, of sitting next to David and just observing the great man. Every 5 minutes, someone at his desk. Just got a quick question for you, David. Just got a quick question. It'll only take 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I used to sit there thinking, how's this poor bugger going to get any work done? Everyone keeps coming up to him every 5 seconds. And it got to a time where I got quite protective of him. So people had to walk behind my desk to get to him. And I became like one of those door people at the nightclub. People would say, David, and I'd go, excuse me, have you got a time for David? And I'll just check with David whether he's got time for you, which made David very uncomfortable because he was such a humble man. But he was a visionary, but he wasn't into faffing around. He had great determination. So David I'd hear him muttering, it's another contract thing, or he wanted to get things done. And he'd known from his work with Klaus and so many people in this room what worked overseas and why weren't we better. So I know we're all feeling his loss, and Samantha Cofield. I know a lot of people that we're just considering how we best commemorate and honour David's legacy in road safety. And we'll speak to the family. I'm sure next year we will find a way to do that on behalf of everyone, but we will dearly miss David. And David was an enormous supporter of this project. He'd often these little lines that I remember he used to say to me about road safety. If you've got a driver's licence in Victoria, the late John Cain used to say, everyone's got an opinion, but geez, it's no substitute for evidence and insights. And that's why he was so passionate about the ECIS. There's so much expertise in this room. There's so much expertise in Victoria, but it's a widely held space where people throw opinions and people are happy to dodge the difficult decisions on hope. And we know hope won't save people's lives and hope won't reduce trauma. So the TAC and our road safety partners, we've been really proud to back this study, from crash to ambulance, to hospital, to policing, to our role, to build that evidence base that will not only help us with policy makers, with decision makers, with politicians, but help us as practitioners, as that we can do better to drive trauma down. So even though it's the end of the year and we're stumbling over the line, we are terrifically excited to be sharing the findings today. So if I could just briefly close out with some thank yous on the study, and I know I'll miss people, so apologies in advance, but to Mike, for staying the course, for your leadership and for your determination. And can I ask actually the room for a round of applause for Mike, this person as well. We thank you. I remember the first phone call I made to you on this, a few years ago now, Mike, a few years ago, just now on this study, but it was make it great. I said, make it great that we can stand up and actually make a difference, and we thank you for it. To Sam Cofield, Antonietta Cavallo, Renee Schuster, Jodie Page-Smith, the entire team at the TAC, Paulette, not here today, Michael Newensteed, no longer with the TAC, your attention to detail, your determination to get it right, to pick something up on page 71 and to stress test every single number. We really thank you for your enormous contribution to the emergency services, police, Libby, your team, both at AV and police, Dr. Bruce Corbin, who I saw in the room too. So it's road safety at its best, it's collegiate, it's collaborative, and we really know that this work will save lives. So I apologise that I'm not able to stay today. We've got new government, new ministers, and I'm running late for a briefing that I'm supposed to be at. So I really hope it's a useful symposium. Thanks so much, and we at the TAC look forward to working with you all next year.
Thank you, Joe. As I said, it's been incredibly supportive of what he called boffin work. So thanks for that. Look, I'm going to start out just by recapping on why we went down the path of doing a very long, expensive and in-depth study on serious injury. For any of you who've been here for the first symposium or any of the other expert panels, etc., that we've had around this study, you'll know this, but I just thought it was worth trying to do quickly a recap on why we're there. Actually, I might just start with just the agenda for today so you're all aware. I'll just quickly finish this overview and we'll hand straight over to Mike, and there'll be a Q&A at the end of that. It's sort of really that Q&A is really about questions that are sort of quite in-depth about the study methodology, etc. A quick break, and it will be a really quick break, 10 minutes, there's coffee and tea and a very light snack, but the idea is just get it and come back in. Then Mike will continue with his presentation, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, and that's really the chance to explore in depth what the study's about and what it really means. And as you can see from here and from Joe's introduction, we've got a panel of eminent experts with us to explore that. So with that, I will just start a little bit about why a serious injury study. I think we all know that we've well and truly started our journey to zero in relation to fatalities. This is only up here for illustrative purposes, but overarchingly, it's a great story. We'd probably say, sitting here right now, with I think about 237 people who've lost their lives on Victoria's roads, not a great moment right now, but historically it's a great story, and I think we are all fairly determined and actually believe it's possible to get to zero in this room. So we were on that journey before we really started thinking about serious injury. So the significant work, the understanding of the risk factors, and the sort of design of countermeasures that went in to fatalities, the work behind it hadn't really been done. And all of that work led, as I said, to enormous success, reduction in deaths by 78% over the last 50 years, in fatal crashes, 17% reduction in the last 10 years, and that's despite massive increases in exposure in terms of travel and number of vehicles on the road. But I think we all know that we haven't had that same focus on serious injury. And so we thought, particularly us at the TAC, what are we going to do about this? So we really started to look at what it meant for the TAC, and we sort of, well, basically we start off with, we pay out about $1.5 billion each year to support people who've been injured, whether it's medical or other benefits that we pay to them. It's around 7,000 people each year, and what it really means in the community sense is a lot of disability, so people living with a disability, a lot of hospital days occupied when they don't need to be, when we've got a health crisis in the state, and a lot of burden on people in terms of life-altering family decisions, life-altering for the people themselves, but also their communities, because the most serious of these injuries, which we look at through the MAIS 3+ scores, they change lives forever. That's going to impact everybody surrounding that person and also cost the community a lot of money. And so we knew that we could do more, and this was really the start of this journey. Obviously, this work is really about developing an evidence base and an understanding, very much to support the government's 2030 goal and our own TAC internal strategy goals, which is the same, the 2030 50% reduction in fatalities and approximately 30% reduction in serious injuries, and the 2050 target of having nobody killed or seriously injured on our roads. But also TAC sustainability, because if things are to continue the way they are, it would be very difficult for TAC to be sustainable into the future, because we're a long tail scheme, and what that means is we just keep on adding people, and the people we keep on adding to the scheme are these people with the life-changing long-term injuries. So they never leave our books. I mean, to some degree, that's very much about money and finances, but it's also very much about morally. We don't want people to be living in a state where they need the services we provide. So again, it is just really trying to address all of these issues. Just really some background, you would have seen some of this information on one of the previous slides, but if you look at what we're calling high priority serious injuries, so that is the MAIS 3+ injuries, they make up only 16% of TAC claims, but 60% of our life costs and 74% of years lived with disability. So it makes up the majority of our burden. So these are the claims that we're really we're trying to address, or the crashes and the injuries behind them that we're trying to address. And it's just such a small proportion of our claims, but such a large burden on all of us. I think just to bring this to life, because I think at the end of the day, it is very much about people. If you look at our supported recovery area at the TAC, so these were where our more serious claims go, we see that 24 months after a crash, that 1 in 2, so half our clients still have post-traumatic stress 2 years later. 2 in 3 of our clients still experience physical pain 24 months post-crash, and 3 in 4 of our clients felt that they had not completely recovered 24 months later. Often that complete recovery is not so much physical, it is that ongoing stress, the mental trauma, etc. And so when you start looking at this, you just realise there is a huge burden that we're not doing a lot about, or we don't know a lot about. I'm not going to read these out, but we did a study a few years ago, and these were some of the quotes that we just took out to remind ourselves, to be honest, as to why we continue to strive to do better.